is it that everything happens on a Friday, right? It's either Monday or Friday. Maybe we could get rid of both those days and just go Tuesday through Thursday. Anyway, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Friday edition of Green Rush Live, the regularly scheduled business of cannabis talk show here on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. So happy to have a regular co-host whenever we talk about women in cannabis. Who better to have on than the Woman in Cannabis Expo founder, Brooke Westlake. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Jimmy. How are you? Happy Friday. I agree with that sentiment. Fridays, everything happens on a Friday or right on a Monday, right? It just kind of seems to be the thing. So Monday, I agree. Tuesday through Thursday sounds good to me for a work week.
There you go. There you go. Well, in the meantime, we'll just chit chat. And we do have our very special guest that we do count on every third week. And he is so good and so reliable now. He cuts it to within 10 seconds of us going live stream. So you're giving Dan French a little agita, but I knew you'd be there. Hi, Morgan.
Hi, apologies, Dan.
It's fine. Believe me, he works with me. He's used to having a lot of stress in his life, let's just say. Morgan is, of course, the Director of Government Relations for NORML in Washington, D.C. There's another word for it. It's called Lobbyist. Morgan, I'm going to start right off the bat because there a news story that changed within 24 hours. There was talk about perhaps getting safe banking talked about on the floor of the Senate now that they've had, I think an extra few senators go on board here. But then yesterday or today came out this morning that nothing before camp gets over. I mean, August recess gets over. What's the latest?
I mean, that's certainly a possibility, but that's also based on, just what one other lobbyist is saying. So, I think that there's still some time before the end of the month for things to change. We're doing everything we can to pressure members of the Senate Banking Committee to get that on the docket before the August recess. But, this is something that we're sort of expecting. And this is going to be one of the big problems that we face in both chambers is actually getting time on the schedule. There's so much other stuff going on right now in government that it can be difficult to actually get some space made for us. I mean, we saw earlier this year with the Senate Banking Committee that as we were barreling towards having more substantive hearings, although we did get one decent one, that we started seeing all sorts of issues involving other banks crashing, and so that started taking up a lot of their time. In the House side, I think that we're going to see some of the same problems once that version starts moving, and that there are a lot of committees that this is going to have to go through that are spending a lot of time on things that are not cannabis related. So convincing lawmakers that this is actually a priority issue for their constituents is one of the biggest challenges we have. But luckily, that's starting to change.
Yes, I know that, and good luck with that. I do want to ask you something about something you just said. You said you're pressuring senators and other members of the House. How do you go about pressuring? Is it lunch, dinner, or waterboarding? Somewhere in the middle?
I mean, constituent support, I think, is probably the biggest driver. At the end of the day, votes are what matters to most politicians. And so if they're hearing from their constituents on a regular basis that this is something that is not just that they support, but that's something that they view as a priority, it starts to steadily change their mind. I mean, of course, this is a long, drawn-out process, but any chance we get to blow up their inboxes and have their phones ringing off the hook with people saying, we don't just support this, we want it to happen as soon as possible, we'll start to bend the needle a little bit. It's not a guarantee, and it really depends on the individual lawmaker, but it does move the needle.
And speaking of moving the needle, before I'm going to throw it to Brooke in a minute for some questions, but Susan Collins from Maine is now supporting safe banking. Did I read that right?
That is correct. She just signed up as another co-sponsor. I think that we still need to get a couple of Republicans on board, as well as assuage some of the concerns of a small number of Democrats before, I think both I, as well as Senate leadership feel comfortable actually moving forward with this, because we don't want to be in a situation where we're calling it for a vote and McConnell is able to pull enough strings to make sure that it goes down by just a vote or two. So we want to make sure that we've got that solid 60 lined up and ready to go before it actually starts getting serious votes. But in the meantime, that doesn't mean that we can't run it through committees, which I think is what needs to happen as soon as possible, because frankly, a lot of senators, I think, are just waiting to see what happens in committee.
Okay, Brooke, you're on.
Okay. Well, Morgan, thank you for coming on with us today. I know you had some concerns because Jimmy and I host every fourth Friday of the month, and we scooted this one up early. And we usually talk about women in cannabis, and that's what we're still here to do. And so one of the questions I have for you, and one of the reasons why you're with us today also, is because you support women in cannabis. And we find that to be equally as important as women in this industry. We need the support from our male coworkers, partners, whoever is there to support us in general. We thank you. So thank you for being here with us today. My question for you is, how many female lobbyists are there lobbying for cannabis within your organization, or who you know about who are there actively, pounding the pavement and creating the ways that all the things that we need to get done?
Well, in terms of actual dedicated cannabis and drug policy advocates that are actually lobbying on the Hill, there are quite a few. I'm NORML's only federal lobbyist, but my former employer, the National Cannabis Industry Association, their government relations team is run by Michelle Rutter-Freiberg. And then when you look at Drug Policy Alliance, their head federal lobbyist is Maritza Perez. And there are a number of other groups that have women in very, very key roles when it comes to lobbying. And then, you even look sort of more behind the scenes. I should also, at DPA, Kat Packer has been doing some amazing work with members of the Senate Banking Committee, as well as others. In terms of some of the more mercenary lobbying firms, I think that there are a number of people that are active there as well. But just in terms of drug policy reform advocates, not professional lobbying firms, there is a significant amount of representation there as well.
And I was also going to add this: those Republicans that you need those votes for, send me their names. I will send them a nice, lovely email. I'm one of the Republicans here in Nevada, and also running for school board again this next following year. So send me their names and I will drop them whatever you guys need support on. I'm happy to send them a letter for you on your behalf from my organization, supporting you guys as well.
Each and every one of them.
Each and every one of them. Okay, got it. I've got the list going right here. Done deal. Promise.
And Morgan, that actually leads into my question. As you know, I'm from Massachusetts. And last time I checked, Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren are on board with this, right?
Correct.
Okay. So what do I do? Who do I bother? Who do I get in front of?
Well, I mean, just because you're not somebody's constituent doesn't mean that you can't provide information to them and their staff. So, I think that considering that that's 95% of what most lobbyists do, they're not just talking to the people from their home states or wherever they live, which I mean, generally is DC. So, that doesn't mean you can't reach out to somebody just because you're not their constituent.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't threaten that I won't vote for you unless you change your mind, though, right?
No, but you can provide them with the information that they need to make good decisions.
Okay. Fair enough. And I'm ready to rock on that one.
Pointing out polling numbers is usually a good tactic.
Polling numbers, 100%. And by the way, isn't it accurate to say that whenever cannabis is on a ballot question, that the voter turnout is record-setting?
That is actually a very interesting question. And unfortunately, there hasn't been enough real solid study done on this to determine exactly what the relationship is between turnout and the presence of cannabis policy reform initiatives on ballots. I think that it's probably bidirectional. We know when to put cannabis policy initiatives on ballots in order to get the best possible returns for them. But in terms of how the presence of those ballots affect other candidates on the ticket or general turnout, especially in off-year elections or midterm elections. There's still, unfortunately, not a lot of research that has been done about that. And I personally think that it's a fascinating subject. And I think that there's been a lot of variation depending on the state that you're in as well. But this is one of those things where if you want a cannabis policy initiative to perform poorly, you push it onto a special election or an off-year ballot, because the people that tend to show up at those elections also belong to the demographics that are the least supportive of legalization. And so we've actually seen this as a tactic at the state level for opponents who are trying to keep these things either off the ballot or make sure that they go down in flames. If they don't succeed at keeping them off the ballot, usually based on lawsuits over technicalities or challenging the signatures that have been submitted, they will push it to a special election where they know it's going to do more poorly than in, say, a presidential election.
And as always, you speak and I think of other great questions. The situation in Florida, I'm sure you're aware of it. It's like, what is it, the third time that they've been trying to get a single answer question on the ballot about legalization of adult use in Florida? And once again, the Attorney General is involved, and Lord knows you can't blame Trulieve on this one because they put a lot of money behind it. I know that. What's going on in Florida?
Well, this is just another example of something that we have seen cropping up more and more at the state level in places where the ballot initiative process still exists. Prohibitionists know that they have lost the battle for hearts and minds when it comes to this issue. And so they use another tactic that has been fairly successful, which is trying to interfere with the ability to put these questions before the voters in the first place.
Right. I think they interfere with the industry in trying to make it as difficult as possible for the industry to succeed. And I think it has been part of, well, certainly in my state's experience, Massachusetts, it was the governor then, Charlie Baker, now in charge of the NCAA, amazingly, said, we want this industry to crawl before they walk, before they run. And that was within 24 hours of the ballot question being passed in Massachusetts. So, I think, again, it's easy to go with conspiracy theories. The most important thing right now, I think, are the issues that are attached to that Safe Banking Act. And I guess the question I have for you is, what is the status of 280E when and if Safe Banking gets passed?
Well, Safe Banking is not going to directly impact 280E.
Okay.
Yeah, I think right now, the primary issue that I think some Democrats are worried about are the language, the portions of the language that affect banking beyond cannabis, in particular Section 10, which is basically designed to prevent the sort of behavior on the part of the federal government that took place during Operation Choke Point, where banks are warned against working with entire industries. Now, this is something that was negotiated at the end of last year by Senate leadership and Senate Republicans as a way to streamline the agreement process and actually get this thing across the finish line. Unfortunately, we have, in particular, Senator Reed from Rhode Island, who is expressing some concerns about this language, saying that it provides too much coverage for banks and does not provide enough, or it interferes with potential oversight. But unfortunately, this is language that I think is going to be very necessary to keep included if we want to maintain Republican support. Also, I mean, just from my own personal perspective, while this was language that Republicans were much more interested in, particularly because of the history of Operation Choke Point going after industries that are more aligned with a lot of Republican constituencies, such as the firearms industry. That initial crackdown also negatively impacted, escorts, payday loan companies, et cetera. And I think that any Democrats that are concerned about this language being a free giveaway to basically Republican-aligned industries should really think about the potential for those same sort of tactics on the part of the federal government being applied to, say, reproductive services providers.
Interesting. Brooke, I bet you can follow that one up with a question.
Oh, I have so many, and I have to agree with Morgan, as well as the limitless amount of data and studies that needs to be done it would be behoove of these young grad students or even students who are in a bachelor's program to actually take a study or report like that on and research and do the data and everything. So I love that this is still such a new industry that there's still viable people to write their thesis statements on and do reports on, but that still doesn't get us to the end goal, which is, as Jimmy and I have had so many conversations, the complication of getting into this industry and the red tape. What would you recommend for women specifically who want to go into this industry? And you know, as much as we know, that the hurdles are relentless, they're hard, they're brutal. What would you recommend? How would you encourage them to come into this new space? Because it is still new, it's still not federally legal. What would be like your selling tactic to a woman to come into this industry?
Well, first of all, NORML is a consumer advocacy. So I think that there are a lot of people who are much more knowledgeable about the processes of getting involved in the industry, depending on the locality. But I think that number one, you have to get involved in the political process and work to make sure that the barriers to entry are as low as possible. But I think the other important part is to make sure that you are learning as much as possible and associated with people that share your values and interests, and particularly as it comes to how you want to do business, what sort of things you want to do to set yourself apart, to look out for your customers in the best possible manner, and to support other businesses in the space as well. You know, there are a lot of people in this industry that are only out for themselves, but the ones that seem to have real lasting power and also be able to more quickly rise within the industry are the ones that collaborate with others and work together to accomplish common goals.
Yeah. Collaboration versus competition is a subject to talk about throughout this industry. But coming up in just about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes or so, is a guy who used to be the original co-host with moi on our news show, on our talk show. His name's Kurt Dalton. He's with Cannabis.net. And a few weeks ago, he posted a newsletter with the following headline. And Morgan, I would love to get your reaction to it, and then we'll tell Kurt about it in a few minutes. The title is, If Women Ran the Cannabis Industry, Would It Be the Same Train Wreck We See Today?
In my experience, women generally tend to do a much better job at running things than men across the board. I think it's difficult to tell exactly what this industry would look like, but I know that we absolutely need to do everything we can to try to improve representation across the board, whether it be gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, because we have an opportunity with this relatively nascent industry to change the way that business works, to change the way that the system operates. And, I think that it would be a wasted opportunity if we don't do everything that we can to try to set an example for other existing industries or new industries that might be coming down the pipeline to emulate.
Okay. Hey, Brooke, you got another one for Morgan? Because we're getting up against 4:20. I know.
I know. We're almost there. So Morgan, give me, who's been one of the most inspirational women that you have maybe worked with, or maybe you haven't worked with them, who you've met on this journey of being in the cannabis industry, being an advocate, a political lobbyist, advocating for all the things that I think Jimmy and I want in this industry. Who's inspired you the most as a female?
That list is just so long. Between folks like Stacia Wallace, who was with SSDP for a very long time, for Sabrina Fendrick, who used to be at NORML, Leah Harris at MPP, Karen O'Keefe at MPP. I mean, the list is just so huge.
That's good.
I love that. So it's like your Oscar list. You're like, wait, the timer's going, and you're like, I got to make sure I thank everybody. Very good answer, Morgan. I like that.
That's good. And are you familiar with the Buy Weed from Women Crusade, the T-shirts that if you go into New York, you see them all over the place?
Yeah, I actually first saw those in Colorado.
There you go. Of course you did. Colorado's always the first, right? If it wasn't Colorado, it was Washington. But
Wanda James is another great example.
Oh, well, Wanda James has been ducking us for 2 years. I've been trying to get her on, and now I use my secret weapon, Brooke Westlake, on her. And she's still, you know what? She's going through a difficult personal time right now. So we give space to anybody who's open, honest, and transparent with us. So we know one day we'll have Wanda James on. And Morgan, I may actually have to use the fact that you brought her name up as another way to perhaps close the deal, you know?
And wait, we got to share this with Morgan, because I don't think Morgan knows this information. And Jimmy, you know this information. Wanda was at our Denver show last year, and while at our show on stage, she found out that she won her primary election. While on stage, announced it, like the crowd, we all went crazy. We were like, oh, and then of course she went on to November and won her November election, which she's the university regent down in Colorado, and beat out a former incumbent. And that can be very challenging to do, but her platform and who she is as a person is so strong. She just crushed it, and we will eventually have her on here. She's such a trailblazer. I adore Wanda. I was so grateful that she came to our show, and it was just such a magical moment to watch her win her primary while at our event last year.
Morgan, maybe we need more women in local politics and state politics too. Just saying.
100%.
Yeah, I apologize for my gender and my race all the time on this show. You know, it's just ridiculous that the old white guy from hundreds of years ago really started screwing up our whole thing and whatever. Let me get off my bandbox before some of my business associates call me and give me a hard time. All right. So Morgan Fox from NORML. What's NORML got coming up that's important we should keep an eye on? Anything in particular, Morgan?
Yeah, for anybody that is involved in the legal community, we've got our annual legal conference coming up in Key West in just a short amount of time. So go to norml.org and check out information for that. You don't necessarily have to be a member of NORML's legal committee to attend, but you know, it gives us an opportunity to try to get you on board. But those events are always fantastic, covering everything from criminal defense to industry law.
There you go. All right. Well, and Key West is a great place to have it. And I was almost there in June of 22, but June of 22 was a horrible year and nothing we could do about it. So it's still on my bucket list. You could send me pictures when you're down there, Morgan. Fair enough?
Well, I'm not going to be attending personally myself, just via Zoom. I've got way too much stuff going on in Congress, but you know, I highly recommend checking it out if you get the opportunity.
There you go. I'll check out Key West for sure. All right, Morgan Fox from NORML, thank you so much for joining us again. We will continue with this Green Rush Live special with Brooke Westlake and our old friend Kurt Dalton in just a few minutes. Don't go away.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, you know, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. There's nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm going to sit down in my rented car. I'm going to jam it into drive. I'm going to head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Laptop, I'm sure we're good.
All right, welcome back to the second half hour of Green Rush Live here on Pro Cannabis Media. This is where we get to talk about the business of cannabis in all respects. And I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of PCM, proud founder of Pro Cannabis Media. And joining me for this section is Brooke Westlake again. And then the top of the hour, it's really going to be all about women in cannabis. But since we couldn't get too many women in cannabis this early, that's not true. I suggested that we got Kurt on. Kurt Dalton is the founder of and CEO of Evergreen Cannabis.net. Just go to Cannabis.net, subscribe, like, share, all that stuff, and you'll read all about all the stuff that Kurt posts and all his staffers post, because he's got a big staff there.
Huge.
So, so Kurt, the reason why you're here is you wrote in your newsletter, if women ran the cannabis industry, would it be the same train wreck we see today? Now, first of all, how do you come up with the clever titles of your newsletters?
That would be some creative editing. That would be on me. The writers usually write the articles. I'll write a few, but this one I actually sent out to a female writer, and it was a look at, as the industry, if you're familiar with it, we all know the big five, what's causing the problems with oversupply and overregulation, overtaxation, and illicit market, no state-to-state sales, etc. But what if we introduce something, I guess you would say, like World War Z, right? Brad Pitt, like the 13th man. What if there was other factors involved with why the cannabis industry is in the funk that it's in right now? And does bro culture, which is another term commonly used in industry, let alone the cannabis industry, and men having close to, I think it was about 80, before the pullback, it was about 80% of the C-suite spots. And what effect would female leadership have? Would we be in the same place? And the article isn't really taking a strong opinion either way, just bringing to light what would happen if it was 80% women, say, over the last 3 years? Would there be any difference? And that obviously caused a lot of comments and suggestions through social media.
Any you might want to share with us today?
I think that the funniest one that sticks in my mind was just, it was a comment on LinkedIn that said, this article is sexist. By definition, comparing men and women just in general is technically sexist, since those are sexist. So I just always laugh when I think about that one. Like, thank you. Good comment.
Let's ask Brooke. Brooke, when you read this, did you think it was sexist?
No, I think it's bringing light to the fact that we still don't have enough women in the industry. And I think it's also shining light on women are multitaskers. And I don't think it would be such a giant train wreck if we had been in the beginning and the numbers were switched, right? So if we were 80% of the industry running it, doing all the things, and men were the 20%, I think it would be more highly organized. I think women get a lot of stuff done, and we are great multitaskers. And so I think the other thing that comes up with this is I get the same thing. People write me when they see Women in Cannabis Expo. I will have men that write me. I've been called sexist because I have women in Cannabis Expo. I've also had men write me and say, am I allowed to be at your event? And I absolutely tell them, yes, you are allowed to be at our events. We want men like Kurt, like Morgan Fox, who we just had on, who support women in the industry. We want them there who support us in business, who support us in our partnerships, coworker development. And I'm not surprised that, we actually have had a huge drop in women in the cannabis industry. It was roughly like Kurt mentioned, the 80-20. It was actually more like almost 30%. And it's actually staggering right now between the 17. I've seen articles where it says 17 to 20%. So I would agree that it would not be as much of a train wreck. And maybe that makes me sound sexist towards men. But at the same time, I think it's an industry where it's a female plant. And maybe in this day and age, some of these industries the baton should be passed on to us women, who not only do we give birth to babies, but man, can we juggle everything that we do every day in our lives?
I'm ready.
Brooke brings up a good point about, like, her main point is that it's a multitasking efficiency. Women may be better at that, is kind of and I was thinking that's a good point. And I was thinking, is there a sense of male hubris or old boys culture that allows for more wasteful spending? More, we'll do the company trip in Hawaii. And I'm not saying women wouldn't have spending, but like, is there an element of that would have helped bottom lines? Is there an element of the old boy culture saying, let's put this one on the company, this trip, or let's do instead of going down the street, let's go to Hawaii for our annual meeting? Would that have happened? I don't know. But yeah, I agree. There's multitasking, and I wonder if the spending habits, if women were in charge, would be the same.
Now,
spending, I think, would be vastly different because of the fact that we're watching our budgets, we're doing all the things. And I think the spending would be very different. And I can speak from having my own business, from experience, looking at the different cities. I would have loved to host one of my events in Hawaii, right? But looking at the spending aspect, I think of all the other women. Are they going to have that in the budget? Would they be able to afford it? Because they don't have the spending dollar like the male counterpart does in this industry. And so therefore it's made me as a business owner look at different places where I'm like, well, this would be a more feasible place for women to come to, more affordable, different things like that. So you're absolutely spot on that. And your background's quite interesting. I love that you have your own Wikipedia page, by the way, because I did a little homework on you. And that was really cool. I was like, I need one of those. I was like, he's setting the path and also helping support women in this industry. So I agree with that, definitely.
Hey, and just to give Kurt more stuff for his ego, he didn't just spew opinions. Okay, this wasn't just an opinion piece. He actually had references, including MJ Biz Daily's report on women and minorities in the cannabis industry in 2022. They found 23.1% of executive positions are held by women, and compared to the rest of the country, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, perhaps, this is another thing he spotted here, referred to 29%. So, you know, the money still is controlled by the old white man, isn't he, guys?
Well,
Kurt?
You bring up a good point. You said my ego, and I was gonna, as I percolated about this piece and about what we're doing, it's like, would the ego, you know, the male ego, let's say like Adam at MedMen and being on the cover of Rolling Stones, would females have had that same push to want to be, you know, the superstar or be on the cover of Rolling Stone? And of course that costs money and that takes away from your business. And how much role did ego play in this? And again, I'm not saying there aren't women who have egos or would like to be famous, but is the male dominant side to be famous, right, within the niche, at a cost to the company, part of it as well? Maybe Brooke would have a feeling on ego, how ego plays into it.
So on the ego aspect, I'll say this: men and women think vastly differently, and they do have a study on this. Men are and this is where men are so successful, and we as women should take this on from our male counterparts and really pay attention to this. Men they make a decision and they go for it. They see a job, they're like, I don't care if I don't qualify, I'm going to apply for it. A woman is a very circular thinker. So we make a decision and we go back. Did I make the right one? Oh, wait, okay, yes. Now I'm going to make this decision. Oh, was that the right one? So what we can do is we have to be more confident in the decisions that we are making. I definitely think that men, because you guys have that linear thinkage and you guys just go for it. Yes, it's partly ego, and I think it helps boost the ego, because then all of a sudden, oh, look, I'm on Rolling Stones and I am famous and I am this. And women, it's really up to us to say, this is what I want, this is what I'm going for, and I don't care what it makes me look like or feel. You know, I want to be on the cover of these things. And we just need more women to step up and not have any fear factor. And again, with the study that was done that men are linear and women are circular, that's where that comes in, where we, again, don't have as many women going in because they're like, well, I don't know if I want to be famous and whatnot. And at the end of the day, we just have to own it. Like pageant beauty queens, we just have to take it on and say, I'm here. This is my company. This is my brand. Yes, put me on the cover. Hey, this is one of the reasons why I work with Jimmy. But yes, ego is one of those things there that men have that I think women don't always necessarily have. We kind of tone it down to be more humble. And we need to just take ownership and be like, look, we're powerful. We're women. It's a female plant.
Yeah. I can only agree with what Brooke's saying. And I will throw this in too. Our society and culture expects when a woman gives birth to a child, they have a different connection to that child. And you find very few stay-at-home dads while the woman goes out to earn a living. That is changing. That is changing. And actually, I support it 100%, needless to say. But a lot of women feel that obligation, Brooke, and you have a couple of children. There's nothing that children and their mothers have different relationships than the other side, which means they don't have any relation. The point is, mothers are always the favorite of the child, I think, or they're at least the disciplinarian and in charge of the checkbook and in charge of the household in a lot of ways. Kurt, who's in charge at your house?
Oh, that's, who the roles are traditional in my family as far as the breadwinning and staying at home. But certainly, like you said, everything is so different these days that every model works as long as it works for you as a couple and as a family. So
right, as long as the kids are taken care of. That I'm 100% with you on that. And if you go back, you mentioned bro culture, and if you go back to our puritanical roots, okay, when two adults from opposite sexes get married, see, I'm making sure I put in the opposite sexes there because people of the same sex are getting married all the time. I love that. Where can the last name, Brooke? It is. I don't know this, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yep, I'll tell you.
Is Westlake your maiden name?
So, a couple of things. Westlake is my maiden name. When I got married, I did not take my husband's last name. I hyphenated. And when we had children, I said to him, I don't feel like it's fair that they just have your last name. I was an only child from my bio dad. I do have a brother and sister from my mom's previous marriage. And so we all had different last names growing up. It was kind of comical, actually. We all had all these different last names. But I said, I'm an only child. And it was really important for my grandpa. He passed away this last April. He was 96 and he was a Westlake. And I told him, I said, when we had Grant, he's going to have my last name and my ex's. We're going to hyphenate the kids' names. And my grandpa was crying on the phone. And my ex was actually very gracious about this. And he said, yeah, you're right. It's not all about me and my name. It's about what we want to do together as a family. And so the boys both have my last name. It's Westlake-Kelly for their last name. And if I ever do remarry, I again will not be taking the last name. I would hyphenate on some things, but my initials are BMW. I plan on keeping those initials. I feel like my name is a very strong name in general. And I think more women just need to speak up if they don't want to take the last name or hyphenate and have the kids' names hyphenated.
Right. So just a personal note here. In the 46th hour of 48 hours of labor that the mother of my child went through, she suggested that we should put her maiden name in as his middle name. And of course, she also wanted to name my son Gabriel after her grandfather. So we put Jake in there too. So he actually has two middle names, no hyphens. So he always gets mail, Gabriel Young Jr.
Nice.
But the point is, again, that is tradition. I'm sure it has a lot to do with our puritanical Christian roots. Am I right? I think that's the tradition. But Kurt, doesn't mean we have to follow it. And these days, now that we've got both sexes marrying, does it really matter what your last name is? Kurt, does it matter to you?
No, it doesn't to me. And I think more on the cannabis side, because it is a newer industry in the world, we can set some new rules and some new expectations as opposed to, say, the automotive industry or the shoe industry. Or now women can define with men, we're going to, in cannabis, a much more of a power role or a C-suite role, just because there's no history to it. Yes, there is a bro culture and how we've done things, but in this specific industry, it is a female plant, and we can maybe start get those levels, a little more evened out with men and women, because it's not established for 100 years how things are done.
Right. And as usual, you enlightened me in the depth of my knowledge when we talk about the stoner bro culture. Okay. And you brought up a great point about Cheech and Chong. So they were out in the 70s, right? Which is, I remember the 70s. I grew up in the 70s. Kurt, I think that's a little before your time.
A little bit. Right? Halfway through.
Okay,
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we all remember when it was illegal, and it was funny because it was the polar opposite of what you expect, if you will. People, getting high in a truck and the smoke's coming out of the truck, and, they're acting wasted. And, it was done in the under the umbrella of comedy, which, as we all know, comedy has changed quite a bit over the politically correct era that we're in now. So I guess my question is stoner still considered a stereotype and a bad word? And both of you guys are going to have opinions on this. So I'm going to go with Brooke first, and then Kurt, you can come in. Brooke, is stoner a bad stereotype for someone who uses cannabis regularly, whether it's for medicine or, I don't like to use the other one, medicinally?
I say yes. I think that we already have these barriers that we've been battling against when it comes to cannabis. And that culture of the kids in the back, they're the stoner kids, and they're the ones by the fence, and they're the ones smoking and getting high. I think that label in general, even though it was created roughly around in the 70s, and with the gentleman who created the term 420, which came out of Humboldt County, when that became a very popular thing, I do think it's negative. I think that we need to look at it as, yes, there is adult use, and adults can have fun with this product, as well as there are medical advancements for this product for people. And I participate on both pieces of that. But I do think the word stoner is very negative. I think if we don't pull away from those words such as stoner, marijuana, I think it continues to build the stigma that we've had around us with the war on drugs for the past 60, 70, 80 years that's been going on, and with reefer madness and all the things. And I politically correct people all the time. When they say marijuana, I say it's called cannabis. The correct term is cannabis. But that is how I feel instinctively. So let's hear what Kurt has to say on this word stoner. What do you think, Kurt?
I would agree with Brooke. Unfortunately, she's absolutely correct. It still has a negative connotation due to the history, like she said. And you remember, we're still talking to people in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, where that word was a negative. And I have a couple teenage sons, and it's still considered among their peer group, like, oh, that's the stoner group, or the vape group is actually the newer version of this. And it's not a positive. It's not a compliment. We have a bunch of articles kind of around this subject on the site. The new stoner stereotype, is stoner a good or bad thing? But in general, I mean, if we're calling it from 50,000 feet, yes, it's not a compliment if you're in this, you know, you're a stoner or he's a stoner, or it doesn't imply even not correct cannabis use, but enhancing your life. It's still considered, you know, negative to your life if you use the word stoner.
Which is one of the reasons why I try to always say medicinal. It's a plant medicine. It's not a drug. It's not created in a lab somewhere. It's grown in the ground that God put on this earth for a reason. And I truly believe that. I really do, that people have used this medicinally for thousands of years. And we all know why it became prohibited in 1937, really 1920 to 1937. And how do we go about undoing all that negativity? Is not going to be done in the next 48 hours. It's not going to be done in the next 4 years. May not even be done until it's legalized. And even if it's legalized, I don't think it'll be the first step towards acceptance and normalization. But my problem with legalization is it involves politicians and attorneys. And I don't know about you guys, but they tend to muck the whole thing up a lot sometimes. All right. Just my opinions. Kurt, well, you disagree.
Brooke actually had a good point. Like, this starts with calling it cannabis, right? Because that's kind of a word people aren't familiar with, say, a decade ago.
Right.
And marijuana has the, you know, whether you consider it a racist origins or it just has that stigma. The first step is call it cannabis. And here in Massachusetts, as Jimmy knows, the billboard industry has been drastically changed and survived thanks to cannabis, because that's the word they have to use in Massachusetts. And every billboard in Massachusetts has a cannabis ahead sign or a cannabis this, which if you own cannabis.net is a nice thing. If we can get everybody over to that word, I'm all for it. But she's right. Like, we have to start with a new word that implies a active user of the plant, a professional user, a person who is responsible and gets their job and their efficiencies done. And that could be by dropping marijuana and stoner and educating people. No, it's cannabis. It's a medicine. It helps me with anxiety, depression, PTSD, anything, sleep. And just changing, because people don't have a definition of cannabis yet, but they do have marijuana and stoner.
And this is, you know what, Kurt, this is what I tell people all the time. No doctor is going to write you a prescription for a bottle of alcohol, right? I mean, I know there's the old saying, a glass of red wine is okay, and doctors will encourage that with some of the antioxidants that's in red wine. But no doctor is going to actively tell you and write you a script and say, hey, go buy a whole case of wine today, or vodka or whatever. But they can for cannabis. And the thing that I tell people, because I do have a 20-year background in healthcare and I do have my master's in criminal justice, the one thing that is a negative when it comes to medical use of cannabis is smoking. Smoking anything is not good on the body. But the most amazing thing about this plant that we get to work with, you can eat it, you can drink it, you can make butter, you can do all these amazing things. So you don't have to ingest it that way. And a doctor can write you a script for it.
Yeah, and that kind of plays into, it's a good point that one of the mistakes I think was made early on was calling it medical marijuana, because that's how state wrote their laws and that's what was written in newspapers. We didn't start with medical cannabis back in 2016, 14, whenever California, I guess Colorado went. But it's funny you mentioned that, because I kind of had a peer group with a bunch of 15-year-old friends of my son, and they know what I do and what I own, and they were discussing alcohol with me, and they're starting to drink and they're underage and that kind of thing. And I was fascinated that their reason why drinking is okay and cannabis is not was because everyone I know does it. People I like, know, and trust and role model, my parents, my cousins, my older, whatever, all do it, Kurt. So why it can't be bad? And I was blown away by that psychology right there. Like, you guys have never Googled, half your parents are doctors, but you've never Googled like dangers of alcohol. Like, they really do believe that drinking is okay because mom and dad do it, because my uncle does it, my older brother, my cousin, and they really like, they're just like, what are you talking about? Like, it's okay, they all do it. I was like, wow, that's amazing. That was an interesting psychological discovery right there for why alcohol to kids, weed, like, it's not like, oh, that's marijuana. But to them, when they see mummy juice at the recycling bin, that's okay. My mom does it, so it must be okay.
That is 100%. You said it, and that is 100% true. I have a 13-year-old, and it's the same thing. Like, oh my God, mom has cannabis. But then if I decide to have a glass of wine, it's like, oh, who cares?
Everybody's doing it, so it must be okay. The people I like, know, and trust, and I role model do it. So how can it be bad, Kurt? And I was like, wow, that's a real thing. I thought you guys would have looked this stuff up and like realize alcohol in no way is good for you. Brain dehydration, depression, the whole thing. There's no good reason to drink alcohol. Sorry, people in the Mediterranean and a glass of wine. That got disproven too. So,
have you ever heard the term California sober?
Yes, we have a few articles on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Brooke, I'm sure you're familiar with it because you're a lot closer to California than either Kurt or I am. You know,
actually, I am not.
Okay, that's interesting unto itself. So I first heard of that word by a woman that owns a CBD company in New Jersey, Jill. I wish I could remember the name of her company, but I remember doing a webinar with us and they were talking about California sober, California sober. That means the people in California are not drinking alcohol anymore. They're using cannabis. And to me, that's the first step towards normalization, as far as I'm concerned. But to me, it goes back to this, Kurt. When you were in school, did you have Mothers Against Drunk Driving come in and talk to you about the dangers of driving drunk?
Probably, yeah. I would say that's been around a long time.
Okay, so we as an industry really need one in the schools to be accepted, because I heard of this story about a middle school in a suburb of Boston, well-respected school system in Boston. I won't name it. The health teacher, parent-teacher night, talked about the fact that they have one day that they talk about the dangers of cannabis in this health curriculum. And somebody went up to her and said, well, what about the benefits of it? What if somebody has, epilepsy or has a seizure in the class, or just it has a lot of anxiety? We can't do that because it's not the curriculum. And that's the problem with education. We are educating our kids for test taking, not for learning. And Mothers Against Drunk Driving did an amazing job, because this generation, my son, 32-year-old, who's now sober, okay, doesn't drink and drive and never wanted to. And in fact, wouldn't get in the car if I had one or two. So, the awareness of it has to happen early, but they're not allowing people to come into schools to talk about the medicinal benefits of cannabis. That's my rant. So we need a mad thing for cannabis. What do you think, Kurt?
Well, you got two different themes there, Jimmy. You remember, it's not called Mothers Against Drinking. There's an extra D called driving. So there's an element of death involved and safety, which we all 100% agree on. But there was no moms going in saying Moms Against Drinking, period. Like, wait a minute. I've been to the recycling bin every weekend too. It's a lot of juice, a lot of wine bottles.
All right.
So in that sense, there's it's a safety issue, right? And I feel the same way with cannabis. I tell my kids, you've never operated, under the influence, shouldn't be having it until you're 21. The whole exact same rules. Yep. We need something. If you're talking about education of the benefits, look at who wrote the dogma. Look who's teaching that health class. It was probably, I don't know, if plus 40, plus 50-year-old person using a book or a lecture plan or a program designed 15, 20 years ago, right? Like, that's why you're not getting the benefits, because no one's written a new one and no one talks about it.
I'm ready to write one.
Yep.
I absolutely am. I think I think this idea needs to happen. And you think about it now, we have 23 adult use legal states. And I'm going out on a limb. And again, we can't message to under 21, because what about the kids? So Kurt, do your kids know about cannabis? Do they know what it does? Do they, or do they just completely don't like it because it used to be illegal?
Well, I can tell you, in every bathroom in every high school in America, there's a full vaping zone of nicotine as well as cannabis. So for all the parents listening, prep schools, private, it's there. And it's conversation. Susan Sarandon has a great meme or quote about, I think her kids are Jack and Laura, like 100% would rather have them use cannabis than drinking. And I've had to have these conversations with my teenage boys who are, people experiment and it's all around them of like, look, when you're 21, like everybody, I'll buy you your first beer. And at 21, you can smoke a joint with me. Till then, you will not. And at that point, you have to respect it. And again, with the studies about male brain development at that age and stuff too, there's some other things going on. I don't want them to use it. But Brooke was right too, as they all like to say they smoke it or vape it. I go, those are really bad ways to put it in your body based on your lung tissue and what's going on. There's other ways to do it. Drink it, eat it, tinctures. Like, we'll talk about that later.
Right. No, and again, I think it's important. If it's funny, there's so many elements to this plant that I've learned about over the last 4 or 5 years. The chemistry, the genetics of the seeds, the terpenes, the steering mechanisms on the plant. So if you go into a store and you're only buying the highest percentage THC, you're not buying the best weed if that's your intent. It's all about the terpene structure. So there's so much education that still needs to be done. There's chemistry, there's science, there's math, there's botany, there's biology. There's so many elements that can be tied in to the plant. And some of the colleges are already embracing our old pal, Max Simon's Greenflower curriculum. I think he's in something like 17 universities now, Kurt, with his curriculum for cannabis. And that's, Greenflower is the site that I used in 2013 when I had my medical card and I said to my bud tender, I'm not sure I want to smoke it anymore. So that's my rant. That's my thing.
No, and the colleges need, I see this blowing up down the path, more students going in, they're going to end up getting more degrees towards cannabis, some specialized degree in cannabis growing, cannabis biology, cannabis business management. And that's coming. And I think that will also help educate the children. And then also people like Wanda James, who got into the University Region in Colorado. And I was the first parent here in Nevada to run for office and being in cannabis industry. And when I run again, it's going to get brought up again because I'm running for the school board and they try to throw it at me. And I'm like, come at me. You're not going to win with this argument with me. But we need more people in the advocacy part of the school districts as well as the universities who can talk about while grandma and grandpa might be using it because they have cancer. So getting children to understand the safety, like Kurt talked about, that the culture of it and all of the aspects, it needs to be taught so that children understand the safety of it and when is the right time, when they're adult, when they're 21, and there's appropriate ways to ingest cannabis.
And there's a reason, I get the reason why. I think I want to make sure that I say this because I get the reason why those who are in charge of our laws and policies are concerned about kids. Heck, I used to wear Save the Children ties every time I was a sportscaster, okay? And I had a kid show, all right, that we talked about issues in sports with kids and athletes. So my point about this is if you give them an opportunity, they'll blow you away. They'll blow you away with their ability. Just show them the research about the impact it has on a young brain. We understand that a young brain might not make the same decisions as an older brain. But guess what, Kurt and Brooke, I don't know about you. I know a lot of people that are pretty stupid my age. Okay, I'm sorry. They get behind the wheel after they've had 3 or 4 drinks and they go drive.
Yeah, it's a good point on the education, but right now, Jimmy, those people taking those classes are 19 to 23 years old.
Right.
And in 20 years, when they're having kids and educating them and they've used it, it's going to be like, they're going to be us in 20 years, 30 years talking like this. And there will be it won't be the stigma around it because it's been around them their whole life. They're educated, but I don't know how we fast forward time to get a whole generation educated like that.
Well, you know what I call it, cannabis standard time, right? It's 1 step forward, 2 steps backward. It's just the nature of what's happened now over the last few years because everybody 4 years ago, 3 years ago, people were talking about legalization, right? Mm-hmm. And here we are still trying to get the goddamn banks open.
Yeah.
Really? All right. Hey, Kurt Dalton, I love chit-chatting with you, as you know.
Thank
and
you.
we didn't even talk about our favorite team in Boston because we will after I go to the break because I want to get your feeling about their new player. All right, we're going to take a break and then I'm not out of here, but I'm going to let Brooke take over the Women in Cannabis show from 5 p.m. For an hour at the top of the hour. So don't go away. Green Rush Live continues with Women in Cannabis. Don't go away.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
We are a cultivation through to consumption lifestyle brand for the cannabis industry. Of course, the crown jewel in our product line is the Armoire home grow system. So now with Green Goddess Supply, we can take you everywhere from growing it in the Armoire right through to storing it, consuming it, rolling it, storing it, you name it, A to Z. Our goal is to enable everybody and anybody anywhere to be able to produce their own organic flower quickly, easily, discreetly, and inexpensively.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrolls.com. Welcome back to Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and then sometimes host of Green Rush Live. Brooke Westlake is my co-host whenever we have, or guest host, if you will, whenever we have a women in cannabis discussion. We will be doing that over the next hour. And in fact, we already have two of her guests in our room, in our green room, Zoom room, whatever room you want to call it. We have Deena, Vallina, the CEO of Apex Advisors, and she's an accountant, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and then we have Jillian Xavier, the CEO and founder of a cannabis testing lab, and that's fascinating. So Brooke, I know you know these two, so have at it, enjoy. I'm going to listen and maybe raise my hand at some point and get a question in, all right?
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us back on here for the second hour, speaking with these amazing women in cannabis. Jimmy and I like to host this every fourth Friday of the month and bring on all these amazing leaders that we need to get to know in the industry, and also help support them as they are on their journey in the cannabis industry. So I would start, let's just start with both of these amazing, beautiful spirits. I have worked with these women. I've worked with Jillian for now 2 years, and she's been at our show. She was a legacy sponsor for Women in Cannabis last year. She had she also has another company on top of her cannabis testing lab. She has products that she makes with black seed hemp oil, and her products are amazing. Shampoo, the tinctures. She's also got the oil. I love it. I use the cream for my feet because I have arthritis. I know I'm getting old. And then we have Deena, who we met last year, and she's a brilliant accountant. And not only was I so fortunate to meet you last year, you got us this a really amazing raffle prize bong that you're going to have to tell everybody about. But Deena will be one of our speakers this year at our expo, as well as Jillian. And I'm going to let them share with you exactly what they do, how they got into this process of this journey. So we'll start with Jillian, and then we'll head over to Deena, and let's just keep this conversation going.
Okay.
Well, you're always happy to be here with me and your big smile, and with Brooke. It's a pleasure being here with you guys. How did I started? Started with cannabis. Well, I'm a consumer myself, and plant has helped me, you know, from being on pharmaceutical. I prefer the plant than anything else. I'm opening a testing lab, but also with opening a testing lab, I do have products like Brooke said. I am on Amazon. I have hemp seed products, shampoo, conditioner, hair oil, some sugar scrub for your skin, because you know y'all need a little bit of love. So in the middle of building the testing lab, I had to figure out, how am I going to generate income? And so I decided to go with the products line. But I'm excited about the science of cannabis. Opening a testing, I would tell you that I'm very close. I'm in my state license alongside the local, but the state, which is more important to me. So moving forward, it feels good to be here. And I also want to give a little kudos to Brooke and Women in Cannabis, which helped in the last year come out, speak to women, encourage women. That's how I met Deena. I love you. And you know, it's beautiful to be on this platform.
I love it. Thank you, Jillian. Everything about Jillian, you guys, as you get to know her, she's got such an incredible story in her journey. And we all have this journey, but it's really amazing when us women get together in a room. It's so powerful when we connect and we share our stories of who we are, where we came from, where we're going, and why we're so passionate about this plant. Deena, you're up. Share with us all the amazing things.
Hi. Well, I've been an accountant for over 25 years, but I was primarily in the entertainment industry for a while, and I needed to get out of that industry. So I looked at cannabis because I did lose a brother to pharmaceutical drugs. And I too had my journey of getting off of benzodiazepines, and cannabis helped a lot with that. So that was my draw to the plant. And I just see a lot of opportunity in the industry, not only for those directly in cannabis, but for those of us who service the business of the industry as well, with services such as accounting and funding and other consulting services. So.
I love that. Tell me, I know some of the biggest hurdles that Jillian's been through, because I've been through some of those hurdles, but what would you guys each say is, what has been the biggest, like up here at the top, biggest hurdle that you have come up against when you decided to, like you said, Deena, you were in the entertainment industry and you're like, hey, I'm jumping ship from accounting there, and I want to shift over to being in cannabis and doing accounting. Tell us what your biggest hurdle was, and then we'll pass that baton back on to Jillian.
Sure. Well, for me, I think the biggest hurdle right now has been that cannabis seems to be a very close, tight-knit community, and it's getting in and getting recognized by people who may want to keep it amongst their own people that they've known for a while. So that's been a big hurdle. I think as far as being a woman, there are some challenges that you face in any industry. So I don't know that those are any different in cannabis than they are elsewhere, but definitely still a bit of a boys' club.
We were, what's interesting? We were just having that discussion with Kurt Dalton, who was just recently on with us, and we were talking about the bro code and the good old boys club. And one of the articles that they had actually written on was, would the cannabis industry still be basically a train wreck like it is right now if women ran it? And the consensus was probably not. That would probably be in a much better position with our organization skills, our multitasking. We're just dynamic. The plant is a female plant, as you know. And so we were just having that. It's so awesome that you mentioned that. Is Jillian, is she back on with us to answer?
I'm here. It was just connection.
We have a Wi-Fi. We have a Wi-Fi issue with Jillian. Let's just cut to the chase. And Jillian, the best thing to do, actually, the best thing for you to do would be to get out of the room and then come back in, and don't turn your video on, even though you're a beautiful woman. Okay. And it seems to be working, but the video is a bigger file, and that takes up more Wi-Fi space. How about the fact that I'm explaining technology? God, Crazy. Anyway, if you're willing to do that, you can. If you want to give it another shot, we're happy to have you here. Just want to apologize.
Let's give it. Let's give it.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's give it another
So
shot.
I believe Deena, you were going to attack that. If women were in charge, would we be having this implosion and market correction in cannabis?
I believe that we probably would be having a much better a result right now if there were more women in charge. There are some women in cannabis, and it's good to see them in the upper levels of leadership. But we certainly need more.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree. We definitely need more. And I love that, you know, we've had these, I like that you also pointed out, Deena, about the aspect of the tight-knit community and sometimes people not really wanting to let you into that barrier because of the tight-knit community. I think I did feel that a lot my first year in 2020. I got a lot of sponsors saying, well, we'll sponsor you after we see the first show, or we want to see where you go with this. And so it was like they wanted to test me out before just actively accepting me in my business and my model, what I was planning and what I was doing. So I do get that. And then once you're in, you're in. But that is a frustration point. I think that us as women collectively need to be more acceptant of any woman who wants to come into this space. A lot of us always have a personal story, but not always. Some people just have passion for the plant, and that is fine too. I think we are all allowed to be here and should be accepted to be here as women in this industry. And that's how we're going to continue to get more women in, is if we can break some of those barriers, such as that cultural where they won't let you in, break some of those barriers as women and say, like, we're all accepted here. Whether or not you have a personal relationship with cannabis or not should not be a determination of whether or not you should be in this industry. What do you think, Jillian?
I think the biggest hurdle is being a woman. You walk into a room or you say, you know, I get on the phone and I'm like, I'm looking for property. By the time they hear my voice, and then, you know, I have that male dominance too. So they're like, oh, no, we're not going to rent to you, Black woman. You know what I mean? And that's the biggest thing. The biggest, it's the truth. It's the biggest hurdle is getting funding, is getting taken seriously. It's saying, you know, I called for insurance on my location and I was told, oh, well, are you calling for the owner? I said, well, I am the owner. Are you sure this is your business or you work for someone else?
Wow. Well,
and so I hang up the phone.
Good.
So it's the disrespect. I hang up the phone because I'm not gonna let you take me out of character. I'm a businesswoman and I'm running not only one business, several businesses. You know what I mean? So that is the biggest thing. But look, we can overcome all these things if we as women can stay together as well. You know what I mean? And we can change the atmosphere at any time. You know, that's the way I feel about it, Brooke.
I think you're right. I think we can change it. I think that we are such leaders in general as females. We're very strong. We were having this discussion earlier about the multitasking that we're able to do. Mothers, women, leaders, balancing the checkbook. You know, we run everything at home. So why shouldn't we be running multi companies, multi-million-dollar companies in the cannabis industry? And definitely that hurdle of the woman aspect, that is a big hurdle. There's been some men I've met along in my path that haven't taken me seriously. And then I have some amazing male supporters, white male supporters, who are like, oh yeah, Brooke, like, she'll get it done. She gets it handled. And it's frustrating, as you mentioned, that the whole painful process of getting the funding, that is such a painful point, I think, for all of us, including the men in this industry. But oftentimes with men in general, they can say, oh, I'm going to make this gummy and these cups and we're going to sell them. And right away they get funding. And here as women, we go, okay, we're going to do the exact same thing. And we hear, oh, we'll come back in 2 years and give us your 2 years tax returns and give us this. And you're like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? What do you think that we need to do collectively as a group of women, both of you, this question goes to both of you, to get better odds of funding for us in general, for our businesses? What do you think we need to do collectively?
Well, I'd say first there needs to be funding available to the cannabis industry. That could start with safe banking and or decriminalization of the plant, and then we would be able to access the same funding that other industries do. And then as far as for women, I think Jillian's point of us coming together is very important. Women supporting women. I know that WISE, Women in Cannabis Expo, changed a lot of things for me, opened a lot of doors. I met a lot of people. So just being together and creating that. And I believe it was the people at the People's Ecosystem that they started a fund that is helping some disenfranchised people get funding for cannabis endeavors. So
yeah, Jillian.
I definitely agree. And I would say for us in Long Beach, we've started a COB, which is a social equity foundation that we started with social equity applicants. It's four of us that's involved. And the plan is to figure out how can we get funding to help other social equity applicants to make it through the process. You know, for me in Long Beach, I'll be, upfront. We're dealing with a mayor who, saying, hey, we don't want to open the floodgates for them. We don't want them to get to the point where they're able to get generational wealth. So let's hold them back as much as we can. So dealing with that type of attitude is just women, we figure out how to come together. As far as banking, I can see that coming somewhere down the line. I have gotten into banking in cannabis. It's very predatory. It's like $100 a month to keep your account.
It's more than that in Nevada. It's more than that in Nevada.
And it's, I mean, 500 is what I negotiated because I was like, look, I'm not open yet. I do have things coming under Dreglo Cannabis Thing Lab. I'm not going to be able to cash that with a regular bank. I have to go predatory for the meantime to be able to do what I think banking of ourselves. And when you get them as a business owner in the business and you have to check somebody.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Can I ask a question? Okay.
Of course, Jimmy.
Deena, Brooke brought up a term that is out of the dark ages. It's called a checkbook. Do women still balance a checkbook is really the question I have here. And I have to, I don't balance my checkbook. I just check my account every day by going online and checking it. I don't know. Sorry, I couldn't resist that. And I do want to ask you about the company. There's a company called Dope, right?
Dope CFO. Yes, actually, that's where I started, was with Dope CFO, with their training program. Yes.
I mean, when somebody called me a dope, I thought he was dissing me, and it turns out now it's a compliment. I'm painfully unhip. Okay, go ahead, Brooke. I'm done.
No, Julian was bringing up some good points, and so is Deena. And the culture will change once it becomes more accepted, and we have a lot of the red tape is out of the way too. I think that's also the big hurdles, and I think both of you can attest to this. But even during the year of my first show, getting women in cannabis, WISE on a billboard, there was red tape all around that. Yeah, Reno, Nevada has tons of billboards, but I couldn't be on just any billboard. It was like the scale of billboards went like from like this, and then it was like whittled down. You've got 4 options here, Brooke. And I was like, what are you talking about? 4 options. So we definitely have marketing is a big hurdle. What have you ladies done to overcome marketing issues in the cannabis space? We're going to start with Jillian on this one, because as you know, marketing online on social media is quite difficult. I've lost 2 Instagram accounts with almost 15,000 followers collectively for both. What have you done when it comes to marketing, and what hurdles have you overcome in cannabis marketing for your companies, Jillian?
Well, for marketing, I would tell you, I jumped on Amazon. I have the hemp seed product, and as soon as I put CBD on there, they flag my account like, we will shut you down immediately.
Yeah.
So you know you cannot do that. So then I went on my website and I'm like, okay, I will do it through my website. And then Square sends me a little flag. Hello, if you're doing THC or we have to shut you down. So you have to sidebar it. Like Brooke said, okay, you can use Instagram for a little bit, get your little Instagram up and running. But it is a chance that you're taking. You just have to watch your language. Instead of saying cannabis, maybe just say the plant. Or you know what I mean, or go back to the street, sayings of what it is, you know what I mean? That's the only way you can get around it. But for right now, as far as marketing, is word of mouth, is flyers, is everything else you can do, but get on social network and get shut down. So it's a small window.
By the way, you're all welcome to market your products and services on Pro Cannabis Media. We will never shut you down. In fact, we will embrace you if you'd like an embracement. Okay.
Come on now.
So that's one of the reasons why I started this, because there has to be. And by the way, everybody's talking about billboards, right? And Kurt mentioned billboards in Massachusetts too. As someone who's been in media for 40 years, billboards were considered passé, old school. Nobody dealt with them anymore. They were a non-factor in budgeting. Now, obviously, given the only thing that cannabis companies can use is a billboard, this is why you're seeing them on every other billboard. And again, if the marketing rules were softened, if every announcement became a public service announcement and not a call to action, which, by the way, people, there are two different ways to produce video. Okay, one's a call to action commercial. The other is just informational and educational. That's the type of announcement we like to show. And I actually think what we're doing is the right thing to do, not use billboards. By the way, what was the last? A second and a half. You have a second and a half. Oh, what's that? Oh, don't be driving and looking at the billboard. And then, of course, well, we're sure that there's over 80% of the people in cars are over 21 that are seeing that billboard. Exactly where did you come up with that information? I mean, this is all part of the stigma, people. This is all part of the stigma. This is what was ingrained. This is why this industry is struggling so bad, as well as 280E, as well as the Schedule 1 acceptance, which is absurd. By the way, it could have been done years ago because it was an administrative thing. Ugh, please. Another reason I hate Tricky Dick Nixon. I remember him. Okay, I'm sorry. I ranted. It's all yours again, Brooke. Sorry.
No, it's Deena's turn to it's Deena's turn to answer the marketing question that we just had. So go ahead and share with us.
Well, as an ancillary business and in a professional capacity, I haven't experienced a whole lot of issues personally with marketing, other than I did change my DBA, my brand, from Bud Counters to Apex Advisors, which is a little bit more professional and not as obvious that I'm working in cannabis. So there's that. I mean, the other concerns besides marketing of being with cannabis in your name or something is, like you mentioned, banking, payment processing, all types of things like that, of course, that you're affected with. And I have seen marketing be a problem for clients who have been shut down or can't use their payment processing and other types of things like that because of their marketing.
Yep, and Jillian's right when it also comes to some of the language. What I've done is, like, I've lost a TikTok account. I'll type out the word cannabis, but sometimes what I'll do, like, LinkedIn's been pretty friendly. I haven't had any issues with Facebook. But instead of typing out the full word cannabis, you could do like CA and then do like cash symbols. So you're like spelling it, but you're phonetically, like you're just being very creative, right? So it's all about going and diving into our creative self, and where somebody can still read the word and go, oh, I get what they're saying. I totally understand it. Or using some old term words. I tend to stay away from the old term words just because of the negativity and the slang and trying to pull away from that. But there are different things that we have to do with the phonetics of the wording. And it's very interesting that we're still here in this industry. And these are the challenges. Like, could we just get our companies up and going to be successful? If you keep throwing these roadblocks in the way, what do you think people are going to do? Women in general, we're just going to like wipe our hands and like move on to the next amazing project that we can handle and take over and rule the world. But when they continue to keep these hurdles, it makes it very difficult for us to be successful. I think one of the things about this industry is like the survival of the fittest. It's the people who can really stick it out, the women who can stick it out. Jimmy and I have had lots of conversations on the different barriers and hurdles that we've all faced in this industry. And so as we get ready to wrap up here, I'm going to give each one of you a minute to give us a little closing statement. But in that closing statement, leave our women out there watching us with some words of wisdom about if they are in this space, if they want to go into this space, leave them with some words of wisdom of how they can be successful, or something that you have that can inspire them. We'll start with Jillian and then we'll close it out with Deena.
I would say believe in yourself and never give up on you, no matter what. And let me tell you something, friend, family, they might look at you and be like, oh, the industry you in. I get that all the time. But here's what I say, when the money comes, be the same way that you're feeling right now, you know, never give up on yourself and never ever give in, and you keep striving. And one thing doesn't work, find something. Oh, I'm waiting on opening a testing lab. How am I going to make money? Okay, well, I came up with products that I sell. You know, if that doesn't work, get into whatever you can get into. Get a sense of community if you can, with genuine people, because you're going to go through some people who are there hanging on to you because they know that you're gonna make it big. You know what I mean? And sometimes you have to let whatever doesn't work, just let it go. Don't fight it. Just keep moving forward. But before we close, I do want to say something, Brooke, if you let me. You know, the company name is Dreglo, and Dreglo is named after DeAndre, my son, who became an angel 7 years ago. Tomorrow is my birthday, so before I go, I do want to give a shout out to an angel that keeps me going. He was my only son and child in this life. And, you know, that's what keeps me going, knowing that I'm living not just for me, but for him as well. And you find the strength inside of you, even when you feel like, oh God, I can't make it. Yes, you can. Every day that you wake up, you have another day to do better and to make a change. So I would say stick close to the ones that stay close to you, and, you know, keep your head up and keep moving forward. Never give up and never give in.
And happy birthday to your son tomorrow, your angel son.
Happy birthday, DeAndre. Happy birthday,
DeAndre,
angel.
We know he's watching over you. We do. Deena, what are your words?
I don't know that I can follow that. I mean,
That's a tough one.
Jillian actually has been so inspirational. Every time I see her speak, she's to watch her speak and to move a room is incredible. So thank you, Jillian. She's been a bright light. But all I'd say is to get out, connect, meet people, and go out there and get it done. There is room here for women, and there is opportunity, much needed opportunity, and much needed work to be done in cannabis. So get involved, join, meet people, and never stop trying, just like Jillian said.
Like that. Positive. I'm learning about positive thinking, by the way. And it's a powerful tool. I get it. Okay. I totally get it. All right. It's just breaking old habits can be very, very challenging for humans, as you know. So, and here's the mantra for everybody to remember: survive to thrive. That should be the mantra of every one of our entrepreneurs that on this show and watches us and follows us, likes us, shares us, whatever they do. Survive to thrive. If you, and Jillian, see if I got this right. If you believe you're going to get it done, you're going to get it done, right?
As you believe, you will receive. You know what I mean? Whatever you believe in life has to come. That's the law of the land. If you're at the top of a 100-foot building, if you drop, you're going to go down. That's the law. But if you believe, whatever you believe in the universe will bring you, guaranteed.
It's great.
Guaranteed.
It's great attitude to go through life. You guys, all three of you are awesome. I'm going to throw it to a break because I'm not sure, Brooke, we haven't gone through that workshop yet, but you're great. You're a great student. Did you see the text I sent? All right.
Yes,
we're
I
going
did.
to take a break. We're going to take a break at Green Rush Live. Come back with two other amazing women to join Brooke and myself for the big finish of Green Rush Live on a Friday. Both of you, thank you both for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ladies.
Thank you.
For having us.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
We are a cultivation through to consumption lifestyle brand for the cannabis industry. Of course, the crown jewel in our product line is the Armoire home grow system. So now with Green Goddess Supply, we can take you everywhere from growing it in the armoire right through to storing it, consuming it, rolling it, storing it, you name it, A to Z. Our goal is to enable everybody and anybody anywhere to be able to produce their own organic flower quickly, easily, discreetly, and inexpensively.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrolls.com. Safetiva Labs in Westfield is fast becoming the #1 testing lab for cannabis in Western Massachusetts. Safetiva understands the importance for accurate on-time test results for your product. That's why their current compliance panel turnaround time is less than 2 days. That's Safetiva Labs in Westfield. For more information, go to safetiva.com. Really live talk shows on a Friday afternoon. We call it Green Rush Live for a reason. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. So happy to continue the discussion about women in cannabis, because I don't like the injustices that are inherent in this industry. And Deena, your accountant, and I were talking about it a little bit on the break before she left. There are so many injustices, like a media company is considered a MRB in the business and banking world, a marijuana-related business, which means our service fees go up. It means we're constantly being looked at because I take money from I would like to take a little more money, to be honest, from the cannabis industry, okay? And the cannabis industry needs to start collaborating, not competing. Okay, that's my rant today. We've got two great guests for this final half hour. One needs no introduction because she has been on with us in the past, and that is Thunder Walker, the CEO and founder of Proud Mary Cannabis, and also the host of the Thunder Walker Experience. And I got to meet you in person in New York, and it was great to see you with Jill Goldsberry.
Great to see you again. Yes, it was really, really wonderful. New York, who can complain, right?
Right. That's exactly right. And we also have Gia Kubik. She is a healer and a coach. By the way, I consider myself a teacher and a coach, but I'm interested in getting healed, and I am starting to work with a positive thinker now. So, Gia,
there it is.
Right? It's the power of positive thinking. It's a cliche, but it's really powerful, isn't it, Gia?
It's the essence of all transformation.
Well, I'm transforming. At least I'm trying to transform. In the meantime, we've got Brooke Westlake, the founder and CEO of Women in Cannabis Expo. This is her show, and I just rent time here. Go ahead, Brooke.
Oh, well, thank you, Jimmy, always for the lovely, nice introduction. So happy to have these next two amazing women on with us today, wrapping up our final half hour of the show. It always amazes me how fast our 2 hours goes by. But these two women are wonderful. I have not had the privilege of meeting Gia yet in person, and I hope that I'm able to do so in the future at one of our Women in Cannabis Expos or at another Women Cannabis event. But I collectively, I've worked with Thunder. Thunder's amazing. I would love to start this with Thunder sharing with the group when you got into the cannabis industry, and then we will pass this question back over to Gia. When you got in the cannabis industry and how you found me and what happened at our first event together in May in Atlantic City last year, because it was such a touching moment for me, and I did not realize all the things that you had been through in that particular moment in your time in life. And I feel like what Gia said, the essence of the words that we speak are so true. And some magic happened there, did it not, Thunder?
It was very, very magical. Literally, I came out of the legacy market. So I had family and friends in the legacy market. And so I was in the real estate market, and we crossed a lot. You can't do cannabis without real estate. But when I heard about Women in Cannabis Expo, I wrote in and asked, could I be a speaker? And I never spoke before on cannabis specifically. And I wanted to talk about cannabis real estate and what was needed. But in my background, which she did not know, I didn't share with anybody, is that I was leaving a abusive relationship. And so I needed to bounce back. I needed a start. I needed something to be amazing in my life. And I needed for the universe to align. And it did. She said, yes, come on, come up. Yes, you can speak. And you know, I remember going to the airport, and there was a song on the radio, and it was all empowering. And I got on the airplane, still kind of shaky, not really understanding what my next move was going to be. But I took my products with me, which were some CBD products, and I came, I had a table, I spoke, and what happened that was so magical, and you just wouldn't even think it would happen. At the end of her event, she has this magical, it was magical for me, almost ticket pool, like a lottery type of ticket pool. And so I purchased some tickets just thinking, okay, whatever. And I'm sitting there literally almost in a daze. I spoke, everybody loved it. I had a great time, and I was kind of in a daze. And as she started to pull these tickets out, my name kept popping up again and again and again and again. And I literally won Woman on the Rise in Cannabis. And that was my platform just to rise me up out of all of the mud that I was going through. I had a disabled daughter, and I had stayed in a relationship way too long because of all the reasons to stay. And cannabis and Women Cannabis Expo really gave me the lift that I needed to get out of that particular situation. Since then, I've opened up my own dispensary processing, and I partnered with a grow. We do things all over the country, but Women in Cannabis Expo and Brooke gave me my first break in a point in my life that I was completely broken. And but no one knew, because I just said, I'm going to step out on faith. I'm going to get this money together for this plane ticket. I'm going to borrow money to get into a hotel room in Atlantic City, of all places. And it all worked. Everything aligned. But I had to step out on faith. And for me, it worked out.
I love that. I love that. And I love that story. I mean, I'm sorry that you have gone through such a challenge, but at the same time, we go through these challenges and we rise above. And looking at Gia's background, not only are you a healer and coach, but you've been in the cannabis industry for quite some time. Share with us, how did you get into this industry, and how are you pivoting into becoming a healer and a coach? Love your photos, by the way. Loved reading about you, but share with all of our viewers.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I
all of my career was in corporate medical. Started out in pharmaceutical, then I went into device. I did all the things. I was running sales teams. It was cool. It was great. And then I was actually interviewing a candidate for a position in the state of Illinois. She was working for PharmaCann, and she said, "I'm selling medical marijuana to doctors." And I had not consumed cannabis my whole life because I was working for like Merck and Pfizer, and you take the P test, you lose the job. So never did it. Never did it in college. My mother would have killed me. God rest her soul. And so anyway, I interviewed this woman for an open role that I had, and she's telling me about this. I'm like, hold on, what? It has these benefits? So I literally just poured myself into the research of this magical plant. So GTI was based out of Illinois, and I started going to the Illinois Women of Cannabis events. And I would go to LinkedIn and I would look at all the C-suite. So I would know their faces because, in a sea of people.
Yeah.
And I went up to Ben Kovler and I said, "You need to hire me." He said, "Why?" I said, "I'm a phenomenal leader in sales and I love this plant and you need to do that." And ultimately I got hired by GTI. They took a chance on me and they sent me to Nevada because my son was in Cali and I wanted to go west. And they basically just dropped me into the state of Nevada, like build the market. And the cool thing was like, there's no place to hide, right? So I'm either going to do it or I'm not. And, having been in the suits and the heels and all this stuff and on all the airplanes and all that stuff, I was like, I get to wear sneakers. This is so cool. I was just happy that I could wear sneakers to work. Okay. I could have been doing, and at that time doing a pop-up was like, this is my job right now. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So I successfully built the state of Nevada, was with GTI, I think 4 years. And then I just got burnt out and needed change. I think my leadership style, I'm a builder. So when I'm maintaining, I get bored, it's like,
yeah.
So I moved on to a couple different companies. I was with Curaleaf just for a little bit. It wasn't a right fit. And then I was working with Cann, the beverage. They wanted me to help build out the state of Nevada. And I thought, that's cool. That's up and coming. It's the future, not just another pre-roll, the same old, same old. And had a wonderful career with them. Last year in November, my mother passed. And the thing about it was, I only had 14 days from the time I knew that she was sick. So I dropped everything, and they were so gracious. They're like, just take care of your mother, take care of yourself, take care of your mother. So I did that. She died magically and peacefully in my arms. And cannabis was a big part of that 10 days because it helped me to tap in and cope and do all the things. So my relationship with the plant became very sacred early on because I didn't use it in college. I never just got stoned or high. I mean, nothing wrong with that. I came upon it like, this is magical. So I entered this space knowing that this is a magical opportunity. So how I got here then in the first of the year, my position was eliminated, which was, I think, my mother just shaking things up there, saying, take time to grieve, which I did. And then it evolved my sacred use of the plant. People started seeking me out to use it in the way that could be more sacred, could be more psychedelic, could be more healing and integrated to some of the other things they were doing. So all of the Reiki, the energy healing, I've been doing that. I've been doing coaching. I even use cannabis to tap into art, which is not new, but that became the sacred use. How can I enhance all the expression of my soul with this plant? And that's how I got here.
What's so interesting about your story is that I align with that in so many ways. I was 20 years in healthcare, shifted. I worked for Covance. We were the final. So we did all the final trials for Sanofi, Merck, Pfizer, all of them. We got the blue.
I know that company.
Approved.
Okay.
And then I did medical sales the last 10 years. It's so cute that you're like, oh, I get to wear sneakers doing my job. And I'm like, I actually continued to keep wearing the business suits because I feel like that's just like who I am. And so when people come to my events, I'm like, it's business suits and high heels. But I want people to come as they are too. But our backgrounds are very,
right?
Yeah. Our backgrounds are very similar in a lot of ways. And you're right. It is a very sacred plant. I can tell you this. I agree with you 100% with the art aspect. If I'm struggling with a business proposal, if we're branching off of something for Weiss or my other entities, All I need to do is have an evening to myself, get really high, and all of a sudden the ideas and it all comes together, and people are like, what, when did you come up with this? I was like, oh, it was a Friday night. I gave myself 2 hours of just me connecting with the plant. And all of a sudden, here was the answer I needed to receive. So I absolutely love this. This question is for both of you. What would you like to see in your career path with your companies in the next 5 years being a woman in cannabis? We're going to start with Gia, and then we're going to take this one over to Thunder.
Sure, that's easy. The word sacred is just sacred in cannabis to me, because this plant is the only one that can be a drug, can be a medicine, can be a sacrament, it could be a sacred sacrament. It's the only thing that can cover all those ways. So what I'd like to see is people understanding how to use this plant to heal, to take little time for themselves. You know, people are going after ayahuasca now, and I love all this stuff. I'm all the plants. But, you know, we think, like, I'm going to go drink some tea. I'm going to go to the jungle. I'm going to come back. My life is fixed. It's not that way. So cannabis is very integrative into all these other modalities. So I would love to see people bringing it back to its original use. Well, one of them in a sacred way, doing little rituals with yourself to help get in touch with yourself so that you're looking less outside of yourself and more within. And what I'd like to see in the industry is starting at the grow. And this is work that I'm actually doing some consulting, because the plant is sacred and no one can deny, I mean, the uses in all these years, right? So helping people start at the grow with little practices to realize, like, this is where it starts. This plant is a frequency. So the leader of any company is that plant is going to feel your mood and your frequency all the way down. So we wonder why we're turning out these dry batches, bad batches. It was the plant, like any plant, is a living being in response to frequency. I think the industry will be far more profitable, which is great. We should be profitable if we take better care of how we start it. That's what I would like to see.
Wow.
If women were in charge of the industry, we'd be more profitable. We talked about that earlier on this show.
100%. 100%.
Just wanted to throw that in. Go ahead, Brooke.
All the women are like, yes. This has been the recurring theme of today's show, based on an article. If women were running the industry, would it be such a train wreck like it is right now? And the answer is no, it wouldn't. But that's okay. Thunder, what do you see? What do you want in the next 5 years? What do you see happening in the next 5 years for women in cannabis and for your companies as well?
You know, I love everything you said about the spirituality of the plant, because I think she is so important to our universe, to who we are. But for me, I also believe that it's important to understand that each state is a patchwork of its own laws, of its own rules, and every grower is doing its own thing. I would like for us to be able to come up out of our state a little bit and talk to people in other states and understand what's working for them and what's not working for them. And maybe we can trade that information. That's why I try to go to a lot of different conventions and speak at different conventions, because I want us to understand that we can't get our own answers in our state. We have to go out and talk to other people. But I want to go a step further than that. I want to talk to people, and I would like for our industry to talk to people that's not in our industry. I think that's so important too. This plant is wonderful. Exactly what you said. Spiritual, it's something that you can grow. It's something that you can consume. It's something that you can build with. You can make clothes with. This is a beautiful, beautiful plant for our world. But we need to make sure that we're communicating with each other what works and what doesn't work. And so once the country and the world accepts cannabis for what it's for, we will have that communication open. So that's my whole hope, is that we actually come up out of our individual states, out of our individual countries, and talk about what makes this plant so special.
That is so well said, Thunder. Amen, girl. Amen. Jimmy.
Oh, look, it's wait. Every time Thunder talks, thunder happens above my house, my apartment. Okay, I just want to say I'm in the middle of a thunderstorm, which, by the way, Dan, just in case we lose power, I thought I'd give you a heads up. So just in case. That being said, both your stories are very compelling in so many ways. I want to talk to both of you off camera because I really want to dig deeper into your true stories. One of the things we did about 3 years ago was, I think it was 2020, we did a tell us your cannabis story and send it to us in an email or a video. And we got some of the most incredible stories because everybody who's, let me rephrase that. First of all, the plant is not for everybody. We understand.
Correct.
Some people are allergic to THC. Some people have respiratory problems, whatever it is. It's not for all people. That being said, there is probably something in the plant that can enhance your wellness, and getting that communicated to the masses is going to be the biggest challenge any of us have to do. We may do tell us your cannabis story. Again, come out of the cannabis closet and tell us your cannabis story. And there's a great storage device called My Story, MYSTORI.com. And we gave away 4 of those over a quarter. So we gave 1 a month away. And it was really, I loved it. Now that we have a bigger following than we did in 2020, I think it'll be even more powerful. And sorry I ranted, but Brooke, go ahead. I'm done.
No, I was passing it to you to see if you had a question for these 2 amazing ladies, but I think, yes, them sharing their cannabis story would be a very awesome, significant thing that we need to do. Well, we have like 8 minutes left.
Yeah. Ask them how being a woman has hurt where they are in business right now, because I think that's a common thing too. And how many times do people, mumble under their breath when you come into a boardroom? Or, I mean, it's not, there's only one person on this call who can identify with that, and that's Thunder. Okay. Because I'll never understand what it's like to be a Black person in this country. Never, no matter how hard I try. And that's one of the reasons why we started Pro Cannabis Media. When I found out that this was not a drug issue, this is a race issue, that 3.5 more times are arrested. Black people are 3.5 more times more apt to get arrested by law enforcement than white people, and both races use it the same amount. So when I read that, it pissed me off beyond. Okay.
Here would be a good question for both of these amazing women in leadership. Cannabis, as we know, was part of, with the war on drugs, was the new Jim Crow laws. Basically, we went from in slavery to now how can we incarcerate? And I know this on multiple levels with my master's in criminal justice. But my stepdad was also half Black, half white, and he smoked. I did not know. I had no idea. Last year on Father's Day, we smoked together, and he died a month later. And he was 82, and cannabis played a huge part in his death because he couldn't have it in the hospital. So I was giving him tinctures. But we know that it's the new Jim Crow. Leading into that, the term social equity and women in cannabis, I think those terms have been a negative effect on us in this industry. What do you both feel and think about that? We're going to start with Thunder, and we're going to wrap up with Gia on that. But the term social equity, and then also being a woman in cannabis, do you think those are positives in the cannabis industry or negatives?
For me, I think social equity is not really used the proper way. I have not been affected, and my family has not been affected by the war on drugs. And what I mean by that is that I haven't had any type of arrest or any type of arrest in my family for the war on drugs. So therefore, for me, I believe those that have been arrested, their family has spent time trying to rebuild because of a family member being arrested and serving time in prison. I think those people should be pushed at the front of the line, okay? But what I think is unfair for anybody is to jump in front of those people. So if they have been truly affected by the war on drugs, which there's people still serving life sentences for cannabis, those people and their families should have reparations for that. Yes. Tremendously. I believe that. Then I want to go a step further. I do believe that women and people of color need to have opportunities, whether it's for an MSO or for training and education, that we may not have the ability to access. But I am from the state of Texas. And so when I decided that I wanted to open up my dispensary, I did my research and I went and found the state of Oklahoma, where it was the entry to the cannabis industry was something that I could afford. It was only $2,500. Plus I had to pay first and last month's rent. And then I had to acquire money to get product. Now that was reasonable for most people in America could do that with the education. The thing that I was missing was education. And so the state did not have a program for people of color or for women because our entry level was so low. Mm-hmm. As I go to other states and I find out that it's $1 million to get a license or $500,000 to get a license in other states, I can see where that program may be very beneficial for women and people of color. But I don't think it's fair, and I'm probably not in the majority here, but I don't think it's fair to jump in front of someone that has spent 10 years in prison for having possession of marijuana. So I'm very, very clear on that stance, because I think that those people deserve not only reparations for marijuana and for what happened in the lives that they took from them, the time that they took from them. I think they deserve the education, the money, the ability to work at an MSO, all of that first. Put them at the front of the line and then let us fall after that. But I want to finish up and circle back around.
Hey, let Gia talk too, Thunder, okay?
This plan is so important for the world. It tops so many different things. And one of the things that I want to say is that mental health does not skip anybody based off of race. Disabilities do not skip anybody based off of race or based off of their sex. So when you have someone that's disabled, my daughter is disabled, she's 11 years old, she's nonverbal, autistic, has apraxia, and has loss of hearing. So for me, people that are disabled, people that have other special needs, people that have mental health needs, this plant will also be able to help them. And I think what we're working on right now in the East Coast, in the tri-states, we're working on the ability for insurance companies to actually pay for this plant as medicine. So that's a twofold thing. One, getting into the industry, and then the other is access. Right. So there's such a big need. Everybody, that's why I say people that work in the industry we work 24/7 because there's such a big need out there. So not only entry into it, which is social equity, which is inclusion, education, the ability to access, but also for the patient that has mental health issues, PTSD, special needs, children. Chronic pain, and the pediatric cannabis. So those are the levels that we have to work through. And I think that is where if we can have medicine for all, I would love to have medicine for all.
All right.
So I hope I answered that for you. I gave you a couple of different things.
Thunder, we love you. Okay. Let's let the other guest, because we're up against the clock. We got a couple of minutes and I'd like to give her an opportunity. That's okay. Sorry, we love, by the way, you exude passion for the industry, and that's what drives this industry. That's what that's why I'm still on it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gina.
Yeah, no, Thunder, you said the things I can't say, and this is very important to be said. So thank you for that. I just want to speak to the part, because I work in the business of transformation. I work with a lot of women, and I personally, because of where I am in my life, where I am in my age and the work that I do, I give no Fs of any man in any room. Not one bit. And I encourage women in this industry and beyond to be in total alignment with yourself, so that at least you can, that's step one, right? Like Thunder, you're in alignment, so you can go and pioneer these things. We have to be in alignment with ourselves and our truth and not be afraid because there's men in the room, and women have to stop going into the room first and cleaning up and getting the coffee. Stop it. Stop it. Show up as an equal. You'll be treated as an equal. But if that doesn't start here, well, we're just going to see a reflection of that. So I think that there are things that are inherently broken in our industry, but there are things that we can do personally to at least move shifts in each interaction that we have. Absolutely. I know I don't have a lot of time, but that's in a nutshell what I would add.
It's awesome. Brooke, your Rolodex, your contacts are all exceptional. Okay, just exceptional people. I'm so glad that you're involved with Green Rush Live, and moving forward, you'll be on at least the fourth Monday of every month. How's that? So
I love it. We're making it happen.
So I do have one more note to throw out there, and Thunder, I'm going to guess that you know who Vladimir Bautista is. The Happy Monkey from New York got his license. He got his license. He got his license this week. So I want to congratulate Vlad and the Happy Monkey crew. Stu Zakem is his PR guy and a friend of all of ours. And I want to congratulate them for getting their license. And again, I will not be here next Friday, but Josh Kincaid is going to take over, as is Brandon Jones, two guys that are, well, let's just say they passed the Jimmy test. And they'll be on taking over for us for a week anyway. So for Brooke Westlake and for all the guests that we've had on the show, I'm Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Coming up on We Talk News this week, another worker for another MSO dies while on the job inside a grow facility. Plus, Philip Morris buys an Israeli cannabis company for a deal up to $650 million. Is big tobacco ready to absorb another crop? And New York finds an illegal cannabis operation in 11 locations over $400,000. Is that enough to stop selling it? And Safe Banking picks up more senator support as Safe Banking moves closer to a vote. Plus, a New Mexico legal dispensary gets shut down for selling imported California weed. And Wiz Khalifa's Kush comes to the Bay State as Cresco Labs teams up with another celebrity. Is it worth it? Plus, coast to coast cannabis coverage on We Talk News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Weed Talk News. I'm Alaina Pinto. In January last year, an employee of True Leaf Grow facility in Massachusetts died after respiratory failure on the job. Now, another employee dies also on the job, and this time in Illinois at GTI, or Green Thumb Industries, based in Chicago. GTI was quick to put out a release that natural causes were listed as cause of death. Now, a new report out of Illinois said the 60-year-old female employee had COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. The worker, identified as Julie McKinney, had been working part-time in that facility run by Green Thumb Industries for 3 years. Over that time, the fire department has regularly been called when she had shortness of breath. Well, this time it was fatal. New York State continues to battle the illegal sale of cannabis in stores in the city. And now Rami Al-Zandani, the owner of 11 convenience stores, has to pay back taxes and over $400,000 in fines. 4 of his stores pleaded guilty to possession and unlicensed sales and paid $5,000 in fines. With more on what is going on in New York, here's Pam Schmiel.
I'm Pam Schmiel, host of the Mary Jane Society podcast with the New York Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Is New York finally making some headway in moving their cannabis industry forward? Yesterday, regulators granted licenses to another 212 social equity entrepreneurs, bringing the number of approved dispensaries to close to 400. And applications for the general public should be released by September, according to the Office of Cannabis Management. And that should really get the ball rolling. And lawmakers also approved the sale of cannabis flower at pop-up events like farmers markets, concerts, festivals, and fairs to help farmers unload their overstock of cannabis. And finally, the New York City District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, known for being very light on crime, has initiated an all-out war with landlords to evict illegal pot shops. That's this week's news. I'm Pam Schmiel for the New York Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News.
Okay, here we go again. Is there hope for safe banking? This is the bill that has been passed in some form by the House 7 times in the last few years. Now it looks like there are 9 GOP senators ready to cross over and support the bill in the U.S. Senate. For more on that development in Washington, D.C., here's Andrew Beringer.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., this is Andrew Beringer for Weed Talk News. Just a quick update on the Safe Banking Act at the federal level. The Safe Banking Act, which is a crucial piece of legislation aimed at ensuring a secure banking environment for the cannabis industry, remains in the committee stage as both political parties engage in discussions to bring it to a vote. Unfortunately, we have just found out that the Safe Banking Act will most likely not be brought up for a committee vote before the end of the session on July 31st. Now, what does this mean? It means that we have to put a pause into everything we're trying to do for the Safe Banking Act, despite our hopes and our dreams of passing it within the next couple of weeks. You will have to tune in to see what their updates are. Reporting from Washington, D.C., this is Andrew Beringer for Weed Talk News.
Curaleaf is laying off 49 workers in New Jersey because that nascent industry is growing more weed in that state than is being sold. So this is a similar tale in many states, causing an overabundance of cannabis that is landlocked in each state because of its federal illegal status. So with more from New Jersey, here's Jill Goldsberry.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jill Goldsberry here with We Talk News New Jersey, and here is the New Jersey report. Curaleaf, the largest multi-state operator in the U.S. based in New York, has 5,000 plus employees. Curaleaf announced this week that they are actually laying off 49 employees from their Winslow, New Jersey cultivation and production facility. According to Curaleaf CEO Matt Darin, New Jersey, with just 35 legal adult use dispensaries, there aren't enough dispensaries in New Jersey to maintain the current product at the Winslow location. So Darin said that they hope to reopen in the future, but depends on the number of Cannabis Regulatory Commission approved new openings. In other news, back in June, I reported that the Cannabis Regulatory Commission voted to give applicants with prior convictions for cannabis offenses exclusivity in access to wholesale distribution and delivery service licenses for 1 year. Well, in a surprising change, New Jersey regulators have significantly amended plans to give social equity applicants the first shot at establishing their cannabis businesses. On Tuesday of this week, the commission voted to dramatically reduce the period to 3 months, with cannabis businesses owned by women, minorities, and veterans getting the priority for the following 3 months. Chairman Diane Hueno stated that, "I think this is well-intentioned, but not quite hitting the mark." And lastly, on a lighter note, if you're excited about all the Barbie-themed festivities coming up in the next week, well, you might want to put on your best Barbie gear and head on over to Popped NYC. That's at Popped NYC space. They're working with at Pretty Tokers to produce this Barbie dress-up event to get ready for the big Barbie dress-up contest hosted by High Garden NYC. It's the Out the Plastic Rooftop Rendezvous hosted by Tribe Tokes. And maybe Barbie did toke a little bit back in the day. You never know. Anyway, I'm Jill Goldsberry with We Talk News New Jersey. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
A New Mexico dispensary tried to create its own interstate commerce by selling cannabis obtained from California and has been shut down. Keep in mind that 80% of the illegal legacy market is grown in that golden state and shipped illegally over the USA. This fact has been one of the drivers toward legalization and state agreements for interstate commerce. Well, an Albuquerque dispensary was shut down for violating the New Mexico law on the legal sale of cannabis. And upon inspection, compliance officers found no record of products for $65,000 in sales of products with California labeling and packaging. It is the first time New Mexico authorities has shut down a dispensary for violations since legalization in 2022. That state market has sold over $300 million of weed in its first year of operation. California continues to be the largest cannabis market in the country, and Lavana Vassal has our California report.
I'm Lavana Vassal reporting for PCM with this week's California report for Weed Talk News. Summertime in California means festival season, and on July 14th through the 16th, the Northern Nights Music Festival took place for its 10th year in the heart of Northern California's Emerald Triangle. In 2019, Northern Nights was the first music festival in the country to have legal on-site cannabis sales and consumption. And in 2022, it was the first music festival to have dispensaries located at stages and to have multiple on-site dispensaries. Now in 2023, Northern Nights has leveled up the cannabis festival experience once again by becoming the first music festival to create its own in-house cannabis cultivar. Following a multi-year process of pheno hunting, Northern Nights had seeds available on-site for both personal and commercial sales, along with flowers of the cultivar available for sampling. Created in collaboration with world-renowned local legacy family breeders Humboldt Seed Company, the new Northern Nights strain relies on proprietary genetics. This year, the festival also incorporated cannabis vending into the venue footprint itself. Fulfillment via the Weed Maps platform and designated purchase pickup zones enabled open sales throughout the event, created a new model that reimagines how cannabis sales can be merged into the festival experience. There were festival-wide cannabis experiences curated by Absolute Extracts, Farmer and the Felon, Arcada Fire, Ridgeline Farms, Madrone, Boonville Farm, and more local licensed cannabis legacy companies. With the world getting back into the full swing of things, it's a beautiful thing to see the still new cannabis hospitality industry in California finally beginning to blossom. That's this week's California Cannabis Report. I'm Lavana Vassa from PCM, reporting for Weed Talk News.
The state of Ohio has a fledgling medical cannabis market, and the battle for legalization begins. First, the Ohio Medical Board made some controversial changes to qualifying diagnoses. This week, they took autism and OCD, or obsessive compulsive behavior, off the list of qualifying conditions. The Ohio Medical Board did add irritable bowel syndrome to the list of qualifying conditions to receive your medical marijuana card. So now let's check in with Brandon Jones, our man in Missouri.
Hey, everybody, it's Brandon Jones from Big Reed Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And yeah, Missouri is going crazy right now. Over $4 million in sales on average per day here in the state now. June was another record-selling month. It's been very crazy to see the market take off and just not plateau, but continue to increase. So we're very excited for the sales here. Over 16,000 jobs have been created by the cannabis market. So we're very, very excited to see the new people getting, actual have an income here. We're seeing some more social equity happening here, and more minority owners are getting ready to come into the state. So that's also a great thing. We're seeing that happen. Events are going crazy right now. So we have the Missouri Growers Cup in September. We have the Major Cannabis Expo. Today, I built a doghouse out of hempcrete. And last week, I was hanging out with the Yin Yang twins. So no matter what kind of culture you want to be a part of, whether it's educational or fun, recreational, we've got it all for you here in the state of Missouri. So again, I'm Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Everybody stay educated and medicated. Have a great week.
Brandon Jones, Missouri Cannabis Report is brought to you by Baker Brands, a curated B2B marketplace for head shops and dispensaries.
Now it's time to check on the publicly traded cannabis stocks with Doug Miller from High on Wall Street.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. In New Jersey news, workers at Cannabis approved a contract with a labor union. This dispensary is owned by an MSO, Columbia Care, and is their first unionized workplace. The union did not provide contract details aside from noting guaranteed wage increases retroactive to March of this year. Also in New Jersey news, Curaleaf is laying off 49 workers at one of its production facilities. It also hopes to be the next MSO to join the TSX, that's the Toronto Stock Exchange. The company wishes to implement a reorganization of its U.S. cannabis assets according to the filing. Let's look at the stock chart, because I mentioned before when it was around 250, it would pop out of the basement, and it did. It ran to about 420, and now I'm watching for it to pull back. And that's this week's cannabis stock report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
The price of a pound of cannabis varies from state to state, since every legal state has its own set of rules and regulations, but there is a wholesale index. Cannabis Benchmarks put out a report this week comparing prices, and believe it or not, despite the doom and gloom from the industry, the price is going up from last year. Benchmarks reports that $1,020 per pound is the average price, which is up from $988 in December, which is an increase of 3.1%. You'll never guess where the most expensive wholesale price for a pound of cannabis is. In Washington, D.C. Yes, it's still illegal to sell in our nation's capital, but now that Maryland is legal, guess where all that tax revenue is going? To Maryland, of course. The East is catching up to the West. In Washington state, though, Matt Friedlander is our correspondent there, and here's his report for this week.
Hello all, Matthew Friedlander coming to you from the owner's office here at Skagit Organics with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. So the LCB has some open rule changes. They are open for public commentary at the moment, most notably rules surrounding the Department of Health medical cannabis program. And there are rules surrounding a new bill that was passed that will be restricting the importation of CBD and hemp products into our regulated market. In 2016, the LCB passed a law that allowed the importation of CBD and hemp into our recreational market, and now they seem to be reversing course. There's also rumblings that the LCB is looking at implementing a new traceability system. So this should be fun for everyone involved, as the 3 previous attempts to do this have been complete disasters, and at one point shut down the entire industry from being able to do transactions for about 2 weeks. On the continuing legislative and legalization front, even here in Washington, it is still a felony to grow a single plant of cannabis, even though we have a recreational legal cannabis market here. And one group continues to step up to try to get this passed, and that is the Cannabis Alliance. They will be hosting a march and rally sometime in August or September, so be on the lookout for details for that event. That's what I got for you. Matthew Friedlander, signing off for Weed Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Things aren't much better in Washington's neighboring state of Oregon. For some reason, many cannabis companies decide that paying taxes is an optional activity. Obviously, they haven't heard the saying that the only 2 guarantees in life is death and taxes. Marianne Kursagi from Oregon reports on just how much is missing from her state and what they are doing about it.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. This week, Oregon's Department of Revenue released a list of taxpayers who owe over $50,000. Unsurprisingly, the list includes a large number of cannabis companies. American Patriot Brands owes over $27 million. This cannabis company is also under investigation from the SEC for fraud. Cannabis licensees also now need to demonstrate tax compliance to renew their license. This will likely lead to a number of cannabis companies surrendering their license. And next, the fallout from testing changes earlier this year continues to grow. Rumors in the industry are that more flower and trim is going to processing because of the difficulty of passing the new Aspergillus testing requirements. Oregon's rules are out of step with other states, and the industry is lobbying for changes. Finally, Cheechable's Summer Sesh is happening next weekend, so grab your tickets before they're sold out. See you there. That'll do it for the Oregon Report this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
You might remember when Vermont passed adult use legalization in 2018, becoming the 11th state to legalize cannabis sales. And at the time, they were the first to get this done through a legislative initiative. So now there are 23 legal states in the US, with a majority using a ballot question to move forward. That initiative in Florida is now under attack by their attorney general. The Sunshine State has a vibrant medical market with close to 1 million registered patients. This week, however, a member of the State Chamber of Commerce has come out in opposition to the ballot question that is currently under attack by their attorney general. So maybe they should follow Vermont's example. The floods, though, have finally subsided there, and Jessie Lynn Dolan has our Vermont report sponsored by Canatrol.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont report. Vermont continues to see heavy rain and flash flooding, damaging crops and facilities statewide. Though many counties have been declared a national major disaster, making government funds and FEMA available for businesses, cannabis licensees are not eligible for any support. The Vermont Cannabis Control Board approved 42 licenses this past week, 38 of them cultivating licenses. Unfortunately, they also voted to ban all temperature-sensitive cannabis products that need refrigeration, removing a dozen products from the market that have already been on the shelves for sale at retailers. That's the Vermont report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Canatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at canatrols.com.
I'm Angie Seifert from Skip Intro Advisors with the Connecticut Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Shangri-La Dispensaries is slated to break ground on its first retail dispensary in Norwalk, and it is now also seeking to open a second location that would offer a drive-through for customers. The proposed two-story drive-through would share an address with a new apartment complex. If approved and built, the location will be the third and last cannabis dispensary in the city. Drive-through dispensaries in a new state? Talk about innovation and differentiation. Lorraine CT, which is operated by Zaina Francis, is seeking the town's approval to open a 3,700 square foot facility to be used to bake edibles, including gummies, other snacks, and THC-infused beverages. The single-story brick warehouse building was previously home to the Fairfield Craft Ales, a brewery that opened in 2016 but closed last fall. Clearly, we are utilizing every square foot of real estate in this small state. Finally, the Stanford Zoning Board unanimously passed a new regulation that also affects cannabis dispensaries. The new rule would prohibit smoke shops and dispensaries from operating within 3,000 square feet of any other such store or within 1,000 square feet of a public or non-public school. It also limits Stanford to one cannabis retailer for every 25,000 residents, effectively capping the city at 5 dispensaries. So Stanford is looking not to overcrowd the city or be within the school zone. I'm Angie Seifert from Skip Intro Advisors with the Connecticut Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News.
There's some progressive reform news from the state of Michigan this week. THC testing for pre-employment for state jobs has been waived by the state Civil Service Commission. Federal employees still have to provide a pre-employment test result, and state police will also have to be tested. However, any Michigan business who suspects someone is under the influence can ask that employee to take a test. Every state has different laws, and that includes Massachusetts. And that's where our PCM founder, Jimmy Young, is from, and he has the Bay State Cannabis Report.
Thanks, Alaina. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, and this is the Bay State Cannabis Report, sponsored by CNA Stores. So, when is a record not a record? When the record is wrong. Last week, we reported that Massachusetts had a record $132 million in sales for the month of June. As it turns out, that total was $151 million combined adult and medical sales, and that total was the 7th largest. It was a record for the year so far. Many national cannabis media reports picked up the story and took the word of the Cannabis Control Commission public documents. Intrepid reporter Chris Ferrone from the Talking Joints Memo was on Green Rush Live last week, and he explains how this can happen.
You know, I'm not here to really turd on all these other outlets, but when I saw that it was the best month I was a little surprised. So I started looking back, and of course, once something is reported, it just gets repeated and repeated and repeated. So I did go and I found 1 or 2 months that had been slightly higher. And, this really isn't a big deal. It's one of those things, but it does go to show that with cannabis media, one thing, for me, the repetition, the aggregation without fact checking, that's a little bothersome.
The Cannabis Control Commission is also taking heat from the testing labs about their inspection process. Michael Kahn, CEO of MCR Labs, said, quote, CCC enforcement staff may be misusing investigations as a pretext to silence and harass licensees. Now, add in the fact that testing labs dictate the amount of THC and other cannabinoids and terpenes in the flower. Getting tough inspections has to be part of the legal process. I mean, doesn't it? That's this week's Bay State Cannabis Report, sponsored by CNA Stores. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young reporting for Weed Talk News.
The Bay State Cannabis Report is sponsored by CNA Stores, a veteran-owned and family-operated dispensary in Amesbury and Haverhill. It has the best selection in the state and a dedication to the community north of Boston.
And finally, celebrity endorsements of cannabis is a marketing tactic that many manufacturers of weed derivatives use to spur sales. Well, in Cannabis.net's weekly newsletter this week, Kurt Dalton explains that practice is not necessarily the case because the facts just don't bear that out. He says it's all about the price. It also hasn't stopped the practice. This week, Cresco Labs has added Grammy and Golden Globe Award nominee Wiz Khalifa and his Khalifa Kush strain to its menu. His brand KK and Khalifa Mints are now available at Sunnyside Cresco Labs dispensary in Framingham, Fall River, Worcester, and Leicester locations. The other thing that Kurt pointed out was that these celebrity brands tend to be less expensive than other comparable products. That alone makes them more popular. There you go. Oh, those cities, those towns that I just named, they're all in Massachusetts. And that's it for Weed Talk News this week. I'm Alaina Pinto. And remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Oh.
We are a cultivation through to consumption lifestyle brand for the cannabis industry. Of course, the crown jewel in our product line is the Armoire home grow system. So now with Green Goddess Supply, we can take you everywhere from growing it in the Armoire right through to storing it, consuming it, rolling it, storing it, you name it, A to Z. Our goal is to enable everybody and anybody anywhere to be able to produce their own organic flower quickly, easily, discreetly, and inexpensively.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Safetiva Labs in Westfield is fast becoming the #1 testing lab for cannabis in Western Massachusetts. Safetiva understands the importance for accurate on-time test results for your product. That's why their current compliance panel turnaround time is less than 2 days. That's Safetiva Labs in Westfield. For more information, go to safetiva.com. The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrolls.com.